Hello dear students, welcome to the analysis of the prelims question paper of 2023, the environment section. I am Sneha Mam and I'll be guiding you through this session. Now first of all, before I go into the questions, I have to tell you, compared to the last few years, the environment section's number of questions has drastically reduced. So for example, if in the previous years you had 18 to 20 questions coming in solely from the environment section, here what can be seen is we have roughly 12 to 14 questions coming in from the environment section, which means this is a reduction in the number of questions from the environment. But the good side is, previously when there used to be 18 to 20 questions, you would see a lot of very ambiguous questions. You see a lot of confusing facts being asked as questions. But on the other hand over here, the environment section is comparatively easy in comparison to the entire paper which is there and in comparison to the last year's questions which were asked. It is somewhere between easy to moderately difficult, but not hard or super difficult as we can mention it. So with that in mind, let's start discussing the questions one by one. The questions that we've picked, or the set of questions, is from set B of the question paper. Okay, so those who have the other sets, ensure that you look the question and then check for the key. Those who have set B, you can just follow the question numbers which are put along with it. The first question in environment came from in the 18th number of set B. The question was regarding community reserves and the question was fairly direct. Once the central government notifies an area as a community reserve, and then 4 points were mentioned. Now understand that even in class when I was teaching you, I told you the central government can declare certain areas as community reserves, and once it is declared, it becomes like a protected area, but not in expanse or anything, but it will have very similar factors related to a protected area. So with that in mind, you can see a lot of these pairing questions being asked. If you look at it, the chief wildlife warden of the state becomes the governing authority. This is a correct statement over here. Hunting is not allowed in such an area. This is one of the most obvious facts that you can mention as correct. You don't have to think a lot about it. Hunting is not allowed in such an area. People of such an area are allowed to collect non-timber forest produce, and this is the important thing over here. Here what you can see is, when you have a community reserves, they are not allowed to collect non-timber forest produce. The primary idea is to preserve this factor. So what you can see over there is that you will have the local community taking part in the participation of conservation activities. They are not allowed to collect non-timber forest produce. So this statement is wrong. People of such area are allowed traditional agriculture practices. In a specific government site itself, it is clearly mentioned that traditional agriculture practices like jhum cultivation, which is your slash and burn cultivation, which destroys the general plants over there, are not allowed in community reserve areas, which means this is also wrong. So out of all the four, you can say that only 2 statements are correct. The answer to the 18th question is B, Bombay, which is only 2 pairs are correct. Moving on to the next question. This is regarding the marsupials. Now, when I'm saying marsupials, the broad idea that you have to have in mind is marsupials are organisms like your kangaroos, your wallabies, etc. And you normally see these in your Australian, your Southeast Asian region, so on. You do not see much of it into your tropics, inside your tropic and your beyond the tropical area. So let's look at this question. The first statement, this is the 22nd question in the set B. Marsupials are not naturally found in India. This is a true statement. Okay, because the conditions that require for marsupials are much more, you have much more hot, humid conditions. Even if you take the most hot, humid conditions which are there in India, you do not see marsupials occurring over here naturally. Now, there is a lot of confusion about this because, see, you can bring in kangaroos over here, you can bring in wallabies over here through external smuggling and things like that, and there were news reports regarding it, but the question sticks to if they are naturally found or not. Marsupials in that aspect are not naturally found. They are endemic to your Australian and your New Zealand region and so on. They are not you do not see them naturally in the Indian subcontinent region. So this is a wrong statement. Again, not wrong statement. Marsupials are not naturally found in India. That happens to be a correct statement. Marsupials can thrive only in montane grasslands with no predators. That is a very extreme statement to the end being, if an organism, unless it is an apex predator, which is a top predator, beyond that, you will not have, for example, if it's a top predator, you will not have any other organisms trying to kill it. It will not have any other organisms trying to predate it. But if you look at marsupials, organisms like kangaroos and wallabies and all, they are not top predators. So what happens is, to say that they will have no predators is an extreme statement. Even if the montane grassland part is correct, the rest part of that statement is incorrect. So now if you look at it, the first statement is correct, the second statement is incorrect, and it is not in any way a reason for the first one. So if you look at your options over here, the option that fits best is C. Statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect. You cannot form it as a reason of the statement 1, nor it is a factually correct statement. So the answer to the 22nd question is C. Moving on to the next one. I would say this is one of the most easiest questions in this paper with regard to environment. Primarily, even when we were taking it in class, I had mentioned about the Species Survival Commission and so on. Here you will see the invasive species specialist group that develops a global invasive species database. Belongs to which one of the following organizations? There's not much to be discussed over here. If you look at all of the ones that are over here, some of the ones that you can clearly eliminate are United Nations World Commission for Environment and Development, will not be the case. If you look at all of these things, and it is a global list, the most prolific organization that creates lists with regard to different species is your IUCN. We know the red list, the green list, the green pages, the pink pages. We've discussed all this extensively in class. So, very easily, the answer to the 23rd question in set B is A. That is your International Union for Conservation of Nature. The answer is A. Got it? So now moving on to the next question. UPSC has reverted back to its love for different species, and not just any like it's not a random species question. It's going into their food habits, their sleeping habits and so on. So here you will see, consider the fauna, that is a lion-tailed macaque, the Malabar civet, the sambar deer. How many of the above are generally nocturnal or most active after sunset? Very interesting question. This is one question where I've had students respond back saying, like, whenever I asked you guys to learn species, I keep telling you, and I also include pictures in the slides where you will see, like, when these organisms are photographed. And the most common picture of a Malabar civet, if you look, is the one that is in a darkness. It will be entirely dark and you will have a Malabar civet looking at it. So you will see that the Malabar civet is nocturnal in nature. Now coming into your lion-tailed macaque and your sambar deer. out of both of this, you will again see that the lion-tailed macaque is diurnal. Diurnal in the sense that it is very active during daytimes. So this is not something that will be there. You can cancel this. Now coming to the sambar deer. Now the sambar deer, you can see that it is both nocturnal. In fact, right after it turns dark, like the dusk period onwards, the evening period onwards, it gets very active. So you can see over here, the right answers over here for this particular question are 2 pairs which are correct. So your answer for this is only 2 pairs. So the answer for the 24th question is B. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following organisms perform a waggle dance for others of their kin to indicate the direction and the distance to a source of their food? If you have any idea, now again this year when we were discussing the species, I told you there was this Apis carignorum which got discovered in the Western Ghats. There was a lot of buzz around several species like your honeybees. So at that point we had clearly pointed out that if they want to go in detail, like a detailed question about its characteristics, maybe they could go into it. Here you will see this waggle dance for others of their kin. Just see over here, you have butterflies, dragonflies, honeybees, wasps. If you've ever observed these organisms, you will land the correct answer. The reason being that if you look at all of these organisms, butterflies, you would have seen 1 or 2 fly here and there, go collect the nectar, go away, that's it. But anytime if you observed a honeybee, there is a specific pattern. It'll come, it'll go over there. Then what you can see is right after that, you'll see another honeybee coming over there. So the reason being that there is a mechanism in these species that allows it to communicate with the kin of its species to come and attract it to the source of food. So the answer over here is C, honeybee. So the answer of the 25th question is C. Now see, these are the reasons why I have denoted the environment part of it to be easy to moderately difficult alone. The reason being that these are mostly common observation questions. Even if you have not observed it, the very fact that, for example, butterflies, dragonflies, wasps, at one or the other point you would have seen these organisms, and you would see out of all these, the most evolved in the sense of their hive making, in the sense of their creation of a hierarchy in the hives and all, it comes up to the honeybees. So in that logic also, you can mark your honeybees as the answer. Moving on to the next question, it's the 26th question. I would say this is again one of the easier questions in this lot. Consider the following statements. Some mushrooms have medicinal properties. Some mushrooms have psychoactive properties. Some mushrooms have insecticidal properties. Some mushrooms have bioluminescent properties. It's the most general question that can be asked. I've told you in class also, mushrooms are one of the most variety-oriented organisms that are there. Fungi species primarily. If you remember when we were looking at the number of species in the class, I had shown you a pie chart which showed that the most number of, when you look at plants and everything, amongst all the other creatures, if you look, fungi comprise a large number of species which are there. So it's common logic that amongst this you will have bioluminescent, insecticidal, psychoactive. Now when you're calling here psychoactive, it primarily means mushrooms which are having hallucinogenic properties, like you would have heard about these species like your magic mushrooms and things like that. Medicinal properties, we've already studied several points in news regarding that. Some mushrooms have insecticidal properties. We know when you cultivate certain mushrooms, what will happen is it is cultivated along with species that need protection from certain insects which are there. So from all of these, if you look, the answer is all 4. That is your answer to the 26th question is D. All 4 of these options are, or how many of these statements are correct? All 4 of them are correct. Moving Moving on to the 27th question, which consider the following statements regarding the Indian squirrels. Now again, understand squirrels previously also, if you've noticed in the UPSC patterns which are there, bats, squirrels, honeybees, butterflies, these are all very prominent species that keep getting touched upon. If you look at squirrels also, previously in a question which asked about the hibernation patterns of certain species, squirrels had featured. So now just look at this question. They build nests by making burrows in the ground. They store their food materials like nuts and seeds in the ground. They are omnivorous. If you look at it over here, if you look any basic Indian squirrel species, there are a lot of subspecies which are involved, and obviously though you can go into the minute things about all the subspecies which are there, but on a general aspect, if you look at the nature of Indian squirrels, you will see that all three of these statements are correct, and the answer to this question is C. 27, all the three statements happen to be correct. The 28th question. 28th question again is just like your the fungi question which was there, and you have a lot of facts to substantiate this one also. The question reads, consider the following statements. Some microorganisms can grow in environments with temperature above the boiling point of water. I have mentioned several times to you in class, be it temperature, salinity, acidity, alkalinity, these are all features that become very problematic to your land animals and plants and things like that. But when it comes to microorganisms, because they have so many evolved capacities, what would happen is you will have species that are able to go beyond a certain temperature, go beyond a certain salinity, etc. We've mentioned about archaebacteria, which can go beyond a certain temperature. It goes beyond the boiling point of water. You see them in hot springs and everything. So you will see that the first statement is correct. Some microorganisms can grow in an environment with temperature below the freezing point of water. Again, the same thing, even in very cold temperatures also, you see the presence of certain microorganisms. That is correct. Some microorganisms can grow in highly acidic environment with a pH below 3. That is also correct, which means that you, be it any extreme conditions, you have the presence of bacteria, bacteria, fungi, whatever is the microorganisms, you have the presence of them over there. This is one of the reasons why when we look at evolution as it is, from even large scale extinctions which are there, you have more and more species coming up. The reason being that in all of these extreme conditions, you can have microorganisms. So the answer to this 28th question is all three of them. So the answer is C. All three of them can be correct. Moving to the 29th question. Which one of the following makes a tool with a stick to scrape insects from a hole in a tree or a log of wood? Now look at that question. Look at the fineness in which it is doing. They are not saying it is going and scratching something. They are saying it is making a tool with a wood and it is going and doing this in the hole so that it can get the insects. Now think about it. Which of these species would have a much more evolved brain capacity to do such an activity? Out of all the ones that are mentioned over here, the ones that belong to the monkey or the primate species is your orangutan. So you can easily reach the answer over here. You don't have to look into fishing cat or otter or sloth bear. See, sloth bear, you have sloth bears, diet as insects, but sloth bear does not do this activity. This is the symbol of a much more evolved brain activity which is there. You see this activity in orangutans, you see it in chimpanzees, you see it in a lot of much more intelligent creatures which are there in the primate family. So the answer to this question is 29th question is D, orangutan. Moving on to the 30th question. The question reads, consider the following: aerosols, foam agents, fire retardants, lubricants. In the making of how many of the above are hydrofluorocarbons used? Think about this again. Whenever we talked about HCFCs, there are two things which you can easily mark. Like aerosols, you know, because I have mentioned in your hairspray, to your air freshener, to any of these things which require spray-like activity, you will see the presence of HCFCs. So aerosol is there. Foam agents are also there. They have a very similar structure as that of the aerosols. They are also created using your HCFCs. Coming to your fire retardants and lubricants, you will see that both of these are widely used in refrigerators, in air conditioners, etc. And we know for a fact that HCFCs are one of the prime reasons why we need to start phasing out of it is because of the rampant use of your air conditioning, cooling and things like that. So here you can say all four of them are used in the making, or you will have HCFCs used in the making of all four of them. The answer to the 30th question is D, all four options. Moving on to the next question. This was a question that gave me so much happiness to solve. The reason being that very casually when we were discussing the final, if you go back and look at the videos, you will see that when we were talking about your different organizations, I had mentioned about cyanide and mercury and everything, and we had specifically touched upon the gold industry which was there. And for some reason or the other, we have a lot of questions related to gold this year, but this particular question was very happiness inducing for this reason. Look at the question. Consider the following statements regarding mercury pollution. Gold mining activity is a source of mercury pollution in the world. This was clearly mentioned because in your gold mining activity, because gold is something that is extremely rare and it is occurring in very minute quantities. To extract it, you require mercury. You require a lot of different components of mercury. In fact, we've also discussed certain aspects like, for example, cinnabar and things like that, where gold occurs in combination with mercury. So when you extract gold, the rest of the mercury gets added into the earth which is there. So you will see that this is a source of mercury pollution. Coal-based thermal power plants cause mercury pollution. Again, something that we had discussed. When you have your coal-based power plants, you have your furnace activity and everything. In several things like your fly ash, in several components that you use in the coal industry, you have the residue which has traces of mercury. So this is also correct. There is no known safe level of exposure to mercury. When we were discussing about lead, I had told you to keep a note of these important metals, and there is no known safe level for mercury. Right now we don't have it, and this is a huge problem also when we discuss about it. So here all of the three statements are correct. The answer to the 89th question is C, all three. Moving on to the 90th question. With reference to green hydrogen, consider the following statements. Again, as expected, there were two questions on green hydrogen. This was very much expected in the entire scenario because there was so much buzz going around it. So here when you look at it, green hydrogen, it can be used directly as a fuel for internal combustion. Yes, it can be used, but as I had mentioned to you, the efficiency is not on par with your other things, but it can be directly used as a fuel. It can be blended with natural gas and used as a fuel for heat or power generation. Again, that is possible. It can be used in the hydrogen fuel cell to run vehicles. That is also correct. In fact, when we were discussing green hydrogen, one of the things that we had mentioned is there is huge amount of versatility of this product. You can use it in combination with several things, and that was also one of the advantages. So how many of the statements are correct? All three of them are correct. The answer to the 90th question is C, all three. Now, when you look at it, this is the last question from the set for environment. So as I told you, if you look at it all together, it's a very easy to moderately difficult paper. Moderately difficult if you are not sure with the basics. A lot of things that I just discussed with you are basic environment which is there. So again, basics have to be strong to solve the paper. Coming to the 99th question. 99th question reads as, in India, the biodiversity management committees, again in our classroom sessions, this was something that was repeatedly mentioned. Biodiversity management committees, the bodies that occur at the local level, the bodies that were created from the Biological Diversity Act which was there. So all of these things were mentioned. In India, the biodiversity management committees are key to the realization of the objectives of the Nagoya Protocol. Yes. Now, you know, Nagoya Protocol came as part of the Convention on Biological Diversity. That statement is correct. The biodiversity management committees have important functions in determining access and benefit sharing. Those who have good basics in environmental organizations will know access and benefit sharing is related to your CBD, including the power to levy collection fees on the access of biological resources within its jurisdiction. This, I would say, is the cherry on the topping for the environment part, because this was discussed in much detail in the class, and I hope those students who've heard the class and who've sat for these sessions have solved it correctly. Both of these statements are correct. The answer to this question is both 1 and 2. The answer to the 99th question is C. With that, we come to an end for the environment prelims questions of 2023. I hope the almost 13 questions, I hope you all were able to do well in this set of questions. All the best for the rest of the sections.